The Battle of Gate Fulford, 20th of September 1066.
In early September 1066, Harold Hardrada sailed for England with some 200 to 300 ships containing at least 8,000 Vikings, with the intention of invading England. Hardrada was joined by Tostig, Harold Godwinson's brother, who was keen for revenge after having his lands taken from him. After sailing up the river Ouse, the invading forces landed and prepared to capture York. However, the north was not left unprotected, and two powerful earls, Edwin of Mercia and Morcar of Northumbria, were prepared to defend the north. Edwin and Morcar decided that the best course of action was to attack the Vikings on the outskirts of York in order to avoid a siege. Although Edwin and Morcar's forces were outnumbered, they still had formidable armies, and if they could attack while the Vikings were unprepared, they had a good chance of victory. However, the choice of battlefield did not play to this advantage, and they were flanked by the river Ouse on one side and swamplands on the other. Also, Hardrada had the higher ground, which meant he could oversee the battle and direct his warriors. The Anglo Saxons struck first, and initially had some success as they attacked before the Vikings had time to fully deploy. Tostig's weaker forces were driven back, but were soon reinforced by seasoned Viking warriors, who managed to separate the Saxon flanks from the main force. As the battle progressed, it became clear that the Vikings were winning, and Edwin and Morcar retreated. While the two northern Saxon armies had been defeated, the victory had come at a price, as there were heavy casualties on both sides. York surrendered to the Norwegians under the promise that the victors would not force entry to their city. It was agreed that the Vikings would take hostages, and that Northumbria would offer support for Hardrada's claim to the throne. The Vikings then retired to Stamford Bridge to await the arrival of hostages.
The significance of the battle.
Had Edwin and Morcar known that Harold was marching north, they could have delayed their attack by hiding behind York's defences, and it's likely that their combined forces would have been victorious against Hardrada. Harold would have then been able to use many of the troops from Edwin and Morcar's armies to help him beat the Normans at Hastings.
The Battle of Stamford Bridge, 25th of September 1066.
It's likely that Hardrada believed that the Anglo Saxons would not attempt a second major battle, and that Harold would remain in the south to repel the Norman threat. However, Harold was already on the march, and after recruiting the surviving Saxon warriors at York, he marched straight to Stamford Bridge to confront Hardrada's forces. It's clear that the Vikings were unprepared for this eventuality, as they had left approximately a third of their men and their armour back at their base. The exact location of the battle is unknown, but it's likely that the Viking forces were camped on both sides of the river by a wooden bridge. There are many conflicting accounts of the battle, but it's generally agreed that the Anglo-Saxons soon defeated the forces on the western bank, and after a delay crossing the bridge, engaged the remaining Vikings. Although the fight on the eastern bank was fierce, Hardrada's Vikings were outflanked, and their hastily formed shield wall was broken. Hardrada was eventually killed with an arrow to his windpipe, and Tostig was cut down and killed. Harold accepted a truce from the remaining Vikings in return for their promises never to attack England again.
The significance of the battle.
While the Battle of Stamford Bridge was an outstanding victory for Harold, he had lost many of his best housecarls, and his men were exhausted from the long march north and the battle itself. Also, Harold was in the north when the Normans landed in the south. This allowed William the opportunity to gain a foothold on the south coast and more time to prepare his forces.